What is up, guys? Welcome back to yet another video. My name is Franco Torres. I'm a guitar player based in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and today we're talking about what I think is one of the best pedals of 2025. This is the Canvas Midi Clock from Walrus Audio. So have you ever wanted to control your pedal board without necessarily jumping straight into MIDI like most of the options that are out there in the market, which no shame on using MIDI controllers. They're freaking awesome, but they can be convoluted at times, right? They can be expensive, and you might need more than just a MIDI controller, right? In different setups, and this happens all the time, you're actually going to need something like this streamline MIDI conduit or like a MIDI hub that you can plug everything into via either TRS or MIDI and then send program changes from an actual MIDI controller. So you'll see a lot of pedal boards out there that have something like the streamline MIDI conduit and then something like a Morningstar Engineering MIDI pedal of any sort, right? They've got a couple of different iterations of their foot switch, or like a disaster area MIDI controller, or whatever other MIDI controller that they prefer, right? But usually you have to combine that with something else like the MIDI conduit. And there's only a few other options that'll do stuff like kind of like this, but in my opinion, there's not anything else that will do exactly what this does, which is why I think it's such a special pedal and why I think it's really one of the best releases of the year. And this, in my opinion, is changing the game moving forward. You're gonna actually start seeing this in multiple pedal boards moving on forward. I'm 100% sure, because it's just revolutionary in my opinion. So let's take a look at the layout, which I'm also going to talk in another section of the video, but actually going somewhat in depth into the controls and whatnot. But let's take a look at it. So you've got 4 different TRS inputs or outputs depending on how you've got it set up, which is super cool because you can actually get an expression pedal, plug it into this, set it up an expression in, and now you can actually, send controls from an expression pedal from this little guy and distribute it into whatever other pedals you want to, which, genius. But also, like, you can have them set up as, different types of outputs, be it tempo outputs or control voltage, MIDI in, MIDI out, 5-pin DIN. We also got the 3.5 mil MIDI in and out. We've got a metronome out. We've got a sync port in there, USB-C. We've got 2 buttons over here and 2 knobs. The knobs are actually, pressable to go into the next feature. Preset menu tempo save. The tempo actually auto saves when you're, working off of it, which is super cool. And then these also have kind of like secondary functions where, like, if you press them a little bit longer, they'll do one thing or the other, depending on how you have it set up. But nonetheless, let's actually dive into it, and I'm gonna run you down to like how I'm gonna be connecting it to my pedal board and what I'm using it for, and then like a little bit of a kind of like dive into the actual pedal. Let's take a look at that. So this is the current iteration of my Quad Cortex pedal board. We've got, obviously, the Quad Cortex. This is kind of like the brain of the operation in this scenario. But in terms of the actual chain, we're going into the precision drive, Quad Cortex, out of the effects loops into this whole section. So particle into the mood, into the RV500, back into the Quad Cortex over here. Of course, we've got expression pedal, and then we've got the Canvas Midi Clock, which right now I'm super stoked about it. This is super cool. The features on it are insane, and in my opinion, it's a revolutionary pedal. I've been thinking about doing a setup like this for a while now, and quite frankly, all I could find were convoluted setups that I didn't necessarily want to dive into, especially partaking the MIDI portion of it, right? So this is pretty much a master clock for everything that's going on over here. So right now, you know, as I'm tapping, you'll see that kind of like it all starts to change a little bit. This one's also hooked into this. How we've got everything connected, right? We've got MIDI from the Walrus Audio Midi Clock into the RV500, MIDI from the RV500 into this one. We're not sending any PC changes from the RV500, just CC changes. And then in terms of like everything else is pretty much hooked up with TRS. So, you know, control voltage and then, so controlled voltage, and then this one's just doing the TRS output into the tap in, which, I mean, this control can do a bunch of different stuff, including MIDI, but we're not using this for MIDI right now. We're just doing clock out of it. You see how everything just kind of like starts, you know, to adapt to that, which is really freaking cool. Obviously, if we change over here and go to the next song, you'll see how everything just kind of like changes a little bit. And one thing that I am actually looking forward to doing on this is to change between songs and, you know, send some MIDI signals so I can change the stuff in the actual RV500. So like some program changes, which you can actually do if you go into the menu and you go into macros. You can set up different macros to, you know, have different sets of control, which is really cool. On the top portion of it, we've got quite a bit, right? We've got two buttons over here, so tempo and save, preset and menu. The tempo is actually auto save, so like if you edit the tempo here, go to the next song, and then you go back to the previous song, it'll stay in what you left it at, which super cool to actually do that kind of stuff. And if you saw what I just did, if you press the A switch, that'll go to the next song, and then if you want to go back, just, you know, press it a little bit longer, and that'll actually do that. This will tap the tempo, and then if you know, step on a little bit longer, it'll actually trigger the metronome so that, you know, you can use that metronome out for whatever purpose, right? Now, if you press this knob over here, you go into our main menu. We've got songs, so, you know, pretty much you can set up whatever songs you want to set up in your set list, and then set lists, that's kind of like just different presets, and you can star them or, you know, take them out and whatnot. But yeah, it's pretty cool because essentially you can set up different set lists or playlists and then different, you know, presets within that. So like if you're playing with a couple different bands, you can set it up to where like you've got the set list per different bands and, you know, edit them on the fly, edit them from your computer, however you want to do that. We've got the macros section, which again is for the MIDI implementation on it, so you can actually send PC changes from it, which is really, really cool. Pretty, you know, interesting stuff, especially like if you're hooking it up to multiple, you know, pedals and multiple units, and you want to do all sorts of crazy things with it. And again, I'm using it pretty conservatively. I'm not doing any PC changes out of this yet. I'm just sending MIDI clock into the RV500, from that into the Quad Cortex, and then just TRS input into everything else. We've got the global settings, so if you go into that, you can actually go into the jacks, and per jack, you can actually set up what you want it to do. So I'm obviously doing tempo out, but like let's say if I wanted to change that and, you know, basically do all sorts of different things, you can actually do that from there as well. So you can pretty much cycle between these four, so tempo out, CV out, expression in or switch in. Click here to go back. You've got the foot switches, so you can actually set up, you know, what you want them to do or what type of a setup you want them to, you know, be working on. You've got metronome, you can get accents on him, and you can, you know, edit that a little bit. For the sync, again, you've got some control in there, and for MIDI, you've got quite a bit of control as well, which is super cool that you can do all of that kind of stuff. You can actually edit the display, you know, get more brightness, get less brightness. So that's, you know, really, really cool. This is actually super neat, the tempo LED pulse. If you don't want it to be tapping all the time, you can set it up to where like it'll, like once you tap, it'll actually go to that just 3 times, right? And there we go. I like to have the tempo always on. That way it's, you know, keeping me accountable, and I can actually take a look at that and tap more and see it change. Obviously, having the actual metronome in the display helps, but I do like to have this. I'm just old school like that. I've grown accustomed to that. And then we can go into the about to just check out the firmware version and whatnot. But yeah, that's basically a rundown on the Canvas Midi Clock. So I've been thinking about actually doing something like this on my board for a while now, and I was actually one that was considering getting a Strymon MIDI conduit and something like a small Morningstar Engineering foot switch. But quite frankly, all I really wanted to do was kind of like sync everything up all together and have something that I could pretty much set up per song to send some MIDI or some tap changes to each pedal out of just something else, right? So doing something like that obviously can be a little bit expensive because you've got to get a couple different units, but you also lose both real estate in your pedal board, and now you've got different ports that you actually have to give up on your power supply, which no problem with that, but I didn't necessarily want to do something like that. So this pedal actually came in just in time, in my opinion. It's a beautiful pedal. The display is great. You can actually do a ton more stuff in it that I actually wanted in a pedal like this, but you can actually use it in a simple setup like I am myself in my board, which it was a no-brainer for me. It's the first pedal that I've actually gotten straight up on release day. I've had it for about a week now. I'm blown away by it. It solves a problem in my board that I've been having for quite a bit now. Well, actually on this board for about 2 years now, because I've always liked to use the Quad Cortex with some external units because I like my external delay pedals. And now I don't have to actually tap every single pedal, and I like to stack my delays. But like now I don't have to go in and tap every single one every single time on any song, and then sometimes you'll get some glitchy stuff, which is cool, and I'm still gonna definitely do that kind of stuff. But sometimes I just want the delays to just be as clean as possible and everything as synced up as I can. And now actually being able to do that with the Canvas Midi Clock, yeah, you guys blew me away, Walrus. I am a huge fan of the pedal. I think it's definitely gonna change the game moving forward. Anyways, that's it for this video. I appreciate you taking the time to come hang out with me, and if you have any questions, any comments, please do drop them down below. I would love to read what you guys think of the pedal. I'm a huge fan of it. I am slightly biased, but yeah, it's fantastic. Anyways, do consider maybe, hopefully subscribing down below, and hopefully I'll see you guys on the next video.